Hello and welcome to another Canon on the Couch tonight. We're doing things a little bit differently tonight. We're converting into a podcast format as well, so I will try my best to use the descriptive words that are necessary for the podcast. But if anyone has any questions tonight, feel free to ask through. I think Bonnie's expecting some of her friends to ask some questions, so she'd be very disappointed if you didn't. But tonight we have filmmaker and photographer, vlogging queen, as well, Bonnie Cee, Canon ambassador. Welcome, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Vlogging queen, come on. I think my last one was 3.5 years ago, but I'll take the title.
If anyone wants to check out any of Bonnie's vlogs, 4 years ago on YouTube, it was a time.
It actually was a time, and now not so much of a time.
If anything, it's shown me how much things change in a time capsule that is like a creative person, right?
Yeah.
Like the vlogging stage was huge. It's kind of like you had to build your identity or your brand through it to some degree. So I completely understand it. I'm not judging it. I think it's quite good. But Bonnie, tell us a bit about yourself and how you got started in photography generally, and then we'll move on from that.
Is this my journey in a nutshell conversation?
Give us a brief description of how it all started for you.
It's been many years, so it's like I'll try and keep it brief. So obviously I started out in the world of photography. I think back in 2009 is when I kind of found photography and knew that's what I wanted to do. I'd kind of been, I guess, fumbling around the creative world before that, not really knowing what it was. Strangely enough, if we're going all the way back, I wanted to be in the film world, and I applied for film school at multiple universities.
I did see that in one of your interviews, I believe. Yeah.
And I didn't get into film school because, back then it was super popular, still is now, but they didn't really do things on portfolio base. It was literally you had to have an OP2 to get in.
Yes.
And I did not because, creative didn't really study that much. Anyway, so photography, when I found it, I was like, yeah, this is it. I know it's what I want to do. And then
how did you find it exactly?
So funnily enough, I,
When did it find you?
Kind of, I don't know. I went on my first overseas trip. It was completely unrelated to photography, but when I was there, literally the best friend I was traveling with at the time, we stayed with her boyfriend. He was into photography and had a camera, and literally that was the first time I'm like, hey, can I have a look at this? And that was the first time it was a Canon 50D, pretty sure. The first time I'd held a camera. And then, the rest of the trip, we were traveling around Europe, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I wish I could be taking pictures of it. But I can't because, but it just kind of I guess, opened my eyes. And then I spent the rest of that trip, it was right in the recession time. So it was really poor on this trip. So what I'd do is go into bookstores because I couldn't afford to buy, go shopping for clothes. So I'd go and read photography books and magazines, and that's what I'd buy because it's a max of $20 as opposed to spending hundreds. And then I came back from there and I'm like, Mum, can you help me buy a camera, lay by it, whatever. And I did, and I got the 50D as well. And
how old are you at this stage?
I would have been 2009, geez, 20.
20s?
Yeah, early 20s.
Okay.
I'm old. But yeah, so I guess, I discovered it. It was after uni. So I would have been 22, 23, I think. And then I came back from there. My mum helped me buy a camera. I lay by the 7200 lens at Harvey Norman.
Yeah, right.
They had a special on. And
not actually allowed to mention Harvey Norman, but you've mentioned it there.
Sorry. I mean, I got it from CameraPro. Put it on lay-by. And basically from there, I got it, read the manual twice. So I learned it. I read a lot of magazines while I was overseas, and learned a lot from them. And then I just,
because it was a different era. I spoke with Jared about a couple of weeks ago, and to learn photography or to get into photography, there was 2 articles online that you might be able to find via Google. And 1 or 2 videos.
There was no YouTube courses on it like there is today. I literally learned about aperture through this magazine article where it had pictures of it was this ant traveling on I don't know, brick wall or something, and it showed, anyway, something weird like that. But yeah, I came back and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I just started shooting, whatever I could, friends, portraits, anything.
Yep.
I got a job in a photography studio, like not shooting, but selling.
Yes.
And then ever since then, just trying to speed up my quick story.
No, take your time.
Ever since then, like every job I had escalated. So the one after that, I think I worked for a fashion e-com brand briefly, like shooting their clothes on mannequins, and then I'd fetch it. Then they went bankrupt or something, like really quick. And then I got a job working for like a real estate photographer, and then I got a job in at a wedding studio, and then I learned a lot from them. I was there for a year, and that like a second shoot weddings for them and stuff. And all on the side, I was, shooting whatever I could.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got my first job like back properly in fashion photography, which is where I was like, this is where I want to be. And I worked for Black Milk Clothing, which is still a brand around now. We used to literally work down the road, which is when I was back in Brazil.
Yeah.
And so I was their in-house photographer for like, I think 4 years. And it was a time to be alive. If anyone remembers that brand, like back in its glory days, was like a real vibe. And so through there, I got to shoot with a lot of experienced models, which really helped. And we got to do really cool different campaigns and a lot of, like, we shot a lot. So, and I was pretty free to like be creative and stuff. So I learned a lot from them. And then after that, 4 years, a bunch of the creative department was made redundant for reasons unknown, who knows. And then I went freelance from there and have been freelance ever since. So after that, I think within 2 weeks, luckily enough, I had obviously been shooting enough on the side and like through my work there that I picked up a couple of e-com clients pretty much straight away.
Sure.
And then I was to just, shooting, once or twice or 3 times, however many a week for fashion brands, e-com, and that's pretty much where the rest snowballed for the next 8-9 years.
So you've been basically freelancing for that duration of about 8-9 years?
Yeah, so I think it was probably since it would be 2014 to early 2015. I think it's been like, it's been a while now.
It's been a ride.
Yeah, couldn't work for anyone else again, unfortunately.
What gave yourself the strength, I guess, to make that decision where you could start going it alone and doing it yourself? When was that point, I guess? Was there a turning point for you? Or?
Well, to be honest, I was forced into it because, as I said, we were made redundant. Like, I think I was too much in my comfort zone and too scared that I wouldn't get clients, because that's the biggest thing. Like, you work in a job and then you're like, but what's it like? Because even when you think about it now, it's like, where do clients come from? Like, unless you're doing outreach, like, which obviously you have to do, but like, it's just you're waiting for emails to come into your inbox asking for you to work for them. So yeah, I was scared, and I don't think if I wasn't made redundant, I don't think I would have taken the leap at that time. But the moment I did, and it was lucky because I was still living at home and had that support from, like not having to, fork out hundreds of dollars a week in rent and stuff like that. So it wasn't as scary, but, I swam straight away. Like, luckily I had been shooting on the side and building those relationships over the years slowly, and then had the portfolio of work from there. It just kind of came together. Like, I can't even really see what, like, I don't know, just sometimes, just inquiries, they just come in.
Good old-fashioned hard work, basically, is what it sounds like.
Well, I guess as well, in that time, Instagram was a huge platform, and I was on Instagram and gained a lot of followers from back in that time, because I was shooting with a lot of big models through Black Milk Clothing and other things. So I think from my time when I worked for them, I got maybe my first like 5,000 to 10,000 followers. And then
you said Black Milk, I'm sorry,
you know
I
them now, the Galaxy leggings, all the printed stuff.
And the cats and all those the rainbows,
all the stuff.
I know now,
exactly.
The leggings are huge.
And they used to be it was a real underground cult brand. Like, it was huge.
It looked like the best place to work as well, to be honest.
It was really fun during those times. Like, obviously I can't comment to how it went afterwards, but in its like prime in those, it was awesome.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, so I think obviously being on Instagram helped a lot, and that's when, still to this day, all my work would probably come from, besides word of mouth. But it's like, you're just on there, you're posting, and then, you know, you connect with brands through there and through models, and it just kind of all came together, for a really long time. And like, I mean,
and talking about Instagram, you've got quite a big following and community base there. How is that something that's developed over time for you? How is it something you've made an educated, mindful guess to keep that in the back of your mind while you're doing certain stuff, or has it just happened pretty naturally as it's gone along?
Well, I mean, back in, once again, I relate to them as the glory years of Instagram. So like pre 2017, 2018, when it kind of like the algorithm got in the way and it started every creator on there. It was really easy to grow. It was really easy to get engagement. And as I said, that's where my work was coming from. So that's where I put in all of my energy. And still to this day, like, I'm on Instagram and I'm posting less frequently and different stuff, but it's really important to do that. And if I hadn't have done that, like, I wouldn't have the career that I had today. Like, that was my, like, you know, I remember talking to people in the past. I mean, like, I don't know if, say, 50 years ago, I would have been successful as a photographer, because how did they get jobs back then? It was a lot, like, they advertised in the newspaper, just word of mouth. Like, Instagram was such a platform that people could get their work seen by brands, models, you know, anything globally. And, you know, like, I would go over to LA and just reach out to models and be like, hey, shoot. And they're like, yeah. And it was that simple. And then, you know, it was, it's time. It's not the same anymore.
No.
It's definitely always like, you've got to nurture it. If you don't, you become irrelevant really quick.
I think it's a really interesting point, based on photography from quite a number of years ago to photography, you know, even 5-10 years ago, to what photography is now. And the difference and the ways that you've got to approach things and how you post and what to post and what channels, because Instagram, I feel like, is kind of almost redundant in a lot of ways now. Like, you obviously need it. It's a good way to showcase your work, but in terms of growing your identity or your brand, it can be extremely difficult. I understand that modern creators are probably struggling and now gravitating towards platforms like TikTok and other things as well to get that same influence, which is quite interesting. And so with your, obviously, your photography, you're building your gear along the way as well. So you started with the trusty 50D. What were the things and the reasons you started to shift with your gear as well, and in the photography sense?
I mean, back then, like, obviously I had to start where I could, and I knew that camera and it was good at the time. I think from there I probably went to the 5D range. Straight after that, it would have been the Mark II, I think, probably at that time. But I've always been, like, I'm a gear fiend. Like, I have more than I need. Like, I would just always, like, want the next thing and, like, lay by it or something back in that time before I could buy it. Like, literally, I'm pretty sure, I feel like many years ago I would have laid by something with you guys as well, like when you had the store over in the other one. But yeah, so I was always adding to my gear, but I've always stuck with Canon because colors have always, just as far as I'm concerned, been the best.
Yeah, for sure.
It paid off 10 years later, because here I am as a Canon ambassador. They finally found me.
Canon ambassador.
Exactly.
How long has that been going, being a Canon ambassador, Bonnie?
I think the last year. So I think we've just reached a year, just about now. Should be. So
How did that come about, if you don't mind me asking?
They literally just reached out to me.
Right.
You know, just as you guys did. And I was surprised, because it's like, me 10 years ago would have never thought that would have happened. So I was stoked. Like, there was a couple of casual conversations first, and then I'm like, oh, okay.
Because I've seen you done
yeah.
some stuff at Sun Studios as well in the past, which is kind of like a Canon hub, I guess, in Sydney.
Yeah, like who knows how long they'd been watching. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm sure they've got their eye on a lot of photographers around, and like because I have been on Instagram and have a platform, like as far as if you're talking about fashion photographers in Australia, I'm sure my name would be in the top 20 of known names, if that makes sense. So yeah, who knows how long. I haven't asked them like how long they'd been, like I'd been on their radar, but it was a really surreal moment and a really like proud moment and quite an achievement
For
to
sure.
have that. Like, hell yeah, of course I will be.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you're still pinching yourself to some degree about it, which is really cool. And like that's obviously a proof of all your hard work as well.
Yeah, it was very exciting.
Now you've obviously started to pivot a little bit to filmmaking, which we will touch on a little bit later as well. How did that progress in ways from your photography? Was it the industry was changing a bit and you were kind of adapting, or was it something you kind of wanted to always get back to because of those that basically you wanted to study it and then maybe you thought maybe it's time to get back into it? How did that come about?
So I think it was definitely more of a me thing than an industry thing, although obviously now the industry is pivoting a lot more into video and a lot of brands want both, and you know, but it was so obviously we haven't touched on it, but I have a daughter. She's 3.5. And through that transformation of becoming a mother, you completely lose yourself and become a new person. So it's like a new version of yourself. So in that time, unfortunately you won't be able to experience it.
I haven't interviewed many mothers before, so this is really good insight to me as a male.
So you can relate. It's a really, surreal thing. Like the version of who I am now is completely different to the version I was before. Like elements are obviously still the same, but when I was like in the depths of that, when my daughter was kind of like, you know, still fairly early days, like 8 months to a year. And then we had the lockdowns and all of the world, like, you know, everyone's work stopped for a while. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And I was like, what do I want out of life? What does my future look like? You know, what do I truly want to do? Like right now I had all the time in the world to, you know, because we're on the Gold Coast, the lockdowns weren't as severe here as everywhere else. We could still get out and shoot. Yeah, but clients weren't really shooting for that first little while because everyone was just too scared to really be back up and running. Like, so we could still like go out and shoot ourselves, but we weren't really shooting brand stuff at that time. So a lot of time on my hands, a bit of an identity crisis, and I'm kind of like, what is it I really want to do? Because now I have the opportunity to create for fun. Because before I was working, so I never had the time to
focus on that
do
part.
what I wanted. And then, you know, I had half of the gear already myself, sort of thing. So I'm like, basically I had a conversation with myself and I was like, I see two like future paths. I could either go into like high-end weddings, like travel, you know, the world and stuff like that. Because really in my current, you know, photography world of shooting, I did like a lot of swimwear and stuff. I'm like, I want to be a 60-year-old woman on the beach shooting lovely, beautiful 20-year-olds in bikinis. Like it just, you know, I'd kind of seen that path through and I'm like, what's next? So I'm like, I either go into kind of high-end photography in another realm or, you know, more like high-end designer stuff, you know, really focusing on that. Or on the other hand was the world of film, which I always wanted to go into, but I never got into it. And then I'm like, well, considering I have the time, why don't I just try it? As in, like, just whip together a short film. And when I say whip together, you know, it's a lot harder than that. But, you know, like, take on a project while I've got the time and see if I like it, basically. And, you know, I had been bringing more motion into campaigns and stuff anyway. So I had, like, a cinema camera by that point because I'd been shooting it for fashion brands. So you know, I had stuff I could use. But, yeah, I just kind of was like, well, why don't I try it, see if I like it, see if I can make it work, make it look good. And then I think December 2020, we shot our very first short film, which was Run With Me. It's a little 6-minute romance little piece. You know, there was, I think, 5 of us over 2 days. And, you know, basically from there, I was like addicted. I'm like, yeah, this is the new path. And ever since then, like, you know, because we did it and it looked amazing and it was fun and it was thrilling and it was a new challenge. It's like after 12 years as a photographer, I felt like I had kind of reached, I guess, especially with this new version of me, which wasn't really focusing on the same things as the past version was. Like, I felt like it wasn't really challenging me and exciting me like it used to. So I wanted the next challenge and the next excitement. And I tell you what, it's hard. Like, you know, and actually going into like narrative drama, like making proper films is so much harder and so much more challenging than just shooting a beautiful girl in a beautiful house with beautiful light. Like, so I kind of, found what was the next challenge for me. But, you know, it's a challenge. It's a lot. But it's, you know, when you get kind of like out of your comfort zone and then kind of pull it off and you're like, okay, I could now retreat back to what was comfortable or I could keep going. It's like, I can't go back now.
You were at a crossroads to some degree.
And I chose a path and now I've gone too far and it's like, I can't go back. It's like, this is my new path. And it's exciting, but it's going to be a very long, hard journey. But it's fun.
It's certainly going. It's certainly going.
We're getting stuff done.
Yeah.
Very slowly, but very surely.
We had a chat a bit about it off air when we were talking about the various things you've done and when you actually put all the effort into the film, and then people don't really know about it or they see the behind the scenes, and then you go through that anxious wait of developing the film, editing the film, and then for a while it's just kind of sitting on the shelf waiting to get approved. How do you manage that experience and how do you keep your emotions in check when moving forward to the next production?
Well, I tend to get itchy feet and start a new project before one's finished because like in the world of photography, everything moves a lot quicker. Turnaround's a lot quicker. You know, you get the reward a lot quicker and then you're on to the next. With film, it's definitely not like that. Like with Casino Beach, which was the TV pilot that we wrote and shot, like I think I had that script pretty much developed and written really early 2021. We originally wanted to shoot it like October 2021, but with lockdowns, borders closed, all of that couldn't happen because the cast, half of them were in Sydney. So that got pushed to January 2022. We shot that. February 2022. We shot that. But now it's like sitting here done. But because we kind of hope that we can bring it to life in a bigger format, you know, and I'm learning how the hell this industry works as an independent producer and director. You know, it's like I'm trying to pitch that to people to see if maybe we can get it picked up somewhere because, you know, it's a bloody good show. And, you know, so it's just sitting there, but it's done. And it's like, you know, or we could put it into festivals, which we will do, but that's like another year. Do you know, it's like,
and you got to wait for the right times, obviously, as well.
It's a really strange thing. It's like you do it and you get the thrill of the shoot. Like it was so much fun, but then the processes are so long, like going through editing, post, sound, and then pitching. And oh my goodness gracious, mate.
I'm going to bring up some photos really quickly, and as we keep talking about the journey and doing a lot of this stuff. Now, obviously, Run With Me was your debut film. Why did you choose like the romance side of things when exploring your first film? Like,
I love a rom-com. I love romance movies. I think
so. It's your personality coming out a lot in the films that you're doing, because obviously there's been a lot of directors, you know, for someone who does horror movies, for example, that their experiences are the fears that they're trying to expel in a way. And what I noticed about Run With Me, obviously, two incredibly good-looking people as well, which is something that I notice you work with a lot, which is great. But you also utilize the elements as well, Australian elements. So I think, was it Mount Tibrigargan or something, possibly.
Oh,
in the
no, it
background.
wasn't. What's it called? It's the one down South Northern Rivers. Mount Warning?
Yeah, because that obviously beautiful scenery and very iconic Australiana sort of look to it, which is certainly a nice touch. And yeah, touching on obviously the romance side of things, that's something that you personally enjoy yourself. Is that why you explored that?
Yeah, so everything I create is like I'm creating what I love to watch. So even though there is a thriller short film in there, but that was fun anyway. So you know, it's like it's not my genre of choice. Although you know what, I like a good thriller, but I like romance movies myself. I like romantic comedies, romantic like dramas, tragedies, anything like. It's definitely a personal preference kind of thing. I like something that has a bit of spicy romance in it. That's just what I like to watch. And if I've got an opportunity to film something at the moment, you know, like I'm not being hired by someone else. I'm creating a body of work that I can show to someone and say, here's me as a director or cinematographer. It's like, or a, you know, producer. It's like, this is what I want to make. That's why I'm producing that work. And it's the same as photography. Like you shoot what you want to get hired for. So, and plus if I wasn't doing that, it's like I wouldn't be interested in it. So I'm literally like creating projects which have elements of what I enjoy and like myself. So yeah, they're generally my genres of choice that I watch, basically. You know.
Cool. And oh, you answered it well.
Yeah. Commercial at heart, you know.
Yeah, for sure. What I guess inspired you to make Run With Me, apart from your love of those kinds of movies? Was there something that gave you the push towards the idea in writing that? Was writing something that you did for that film?
Well, so no, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
However, I come up with the ideas and then so I actually.
How do you think of these ideas? Tell us about your creative process.
My imagination. I don't know. I've seen enough to be able to concoct a good romantic story in my mind.
So the Home and Away replaying in your head.
Look, maybe I don't watch Home and Away, but there's plenty of great movies on, you know, all kinds of streaming platforms. But no, so with that one specifically, and with Casino Beach, like I'll usually kind of. I think Run With Me because I was so like, okay, I'm going to do this. I just literally one night in my notes on my phone when I was in bed, just like brain dumped this, like an outline for that. And then I literally went on a filmmakers Facebook group and I was like, hey, any writers, you know, want a gig basically in helping me turn my idea into a script. And then I, through that, got a message from Joanne, who during lockdowns and stuff didn't have much work going on herself, but she's actually a really talented writer. She's written a bunch of movies and she's directed movies, like they're on Netflix and everything. She's very talented. And she's like, I love this genre. No one does this genre. Everyone's writing horror films and stuff like that, or like deep art house. And, you know, like no one does. Like, anyway, so she was like, I would love to help you with this. And she wrote Run With Me and Casino Beach. And then I found another writer who was a recommendation through a friend who wrote Christmas Eve, which is the short film we're about to release now for Christmas. And then another one which we are shooting in February, which is a romantic like tragedy. It's a bit more emotional and they all have an element of romance, but that's just because that's what I like.
So thank you for sharing. But putting that together, how did you develop your team to do a lot of these productions? Is that something that you've people that you know along your journey as well?
Yeah, it's been people that I meet along the way. Like it's really hard when you're coming into a new industry that you have no connections in, and, you know, like you literally just. I'm still figuring it out because it's really difficult, and especially in the film world, like really there's, you know, I would say like 30 to 100 people who work on a production. Like it's not a one-man show like photography is. So it is really difficult. Obviously at first I met Joanne and then with our very first crew, it was just people I knew or found through this Facebook group. Like it started that simply because like I operated on that one, so I was filming it, and then I had someone who had like assisted me in photography. He came up was my assistant, and then I found a sound guy and a gaffer who are now very good friends, you know, through this Facebook group. And then since then, like I went and interned on a film, and then met a few other people, and it's like very slowly and over the years, like bringing new crew on who know people. Like on Christmas Eve, this last one, I had, you know, I have an inner circle of people who like know me now and are supporting what I'm doing and are like there to, I guess, be a part of it. And then they will bring in people later. So it's like we had an incredibly talented gaffer, Bo, who came on and he lit Christmas Eve, and it was like phenomenal. Like he's worked on Elvis, and like he was just Max Furiosa. So it's like incredibly talented. And now he's working on the next one, and it's like, and he'll bring in, you know, other people that he knows. So it's slowly like broadening and you know, because they have Facebook groups for filmmakers and stuff like that who are looking for work. Or you can, you know, cold email out to, you know, I'll stalk IMDb and look for editors, like literally who edited Australian, you know, movies in a similar vibe. And I'm like, that's how I found my editor for Casino Beach, you know, just work out your way, really. But it's a lot.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've kind of spread your web quite far from each production to the next, and that's obviously given you the option of choosing people that you connect with. How important is connecting with the people that you're working on in these roles?
Yeah, I mean, especially on a film set, like it's all about having the team vibe right. And so, yeah, it's really tricky. Like, and this is the first time I've kind of like worked with so many people.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, there are people who I'll work with, and then they'll kind of like see what I'm trying to do and, you know, want to help me along. And, you know, yeah, and they're like supporting what I'm doing, you know, and they're, you know, always going to help me on whatever I need, sort of thing. And like we build really good relationships, and then new people will come in, and it's like maybe there won't be that same thing because you know, really we haven't met before, and they don't know what I'm about, and you know, maybe we aren't friends, you know. But I usually win them over by the end. But you know, like it is really tricky, actually. You know, a challenge we have had before is like blending experienced crew with indie crew, which is a big challenge. I've learned some lessons over because obviously I'm trying to each production like elevate it a bit.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's very expensive, you know, like, you know, I pay everyone what they ask, sort of thing. So it's a very busy industry at the moment. So no one's like wanting for work. Like it's always like, you know, can you be free? How much will you do it for? Sort of thing. So yeah, it's really tricky, but you do build those like really solid relationships, and then they'll always stick by you, sort of thing, and vice versa. So it's really nice.
That is. I feel like during obviously lockdown and that period of time, a lot of productions were actually coming to Australia, which probably opened a lot of eyes, especially for people in Australia, but internationally as well, that this can be a place that can produce quality work, which is pretty exciting, I find. And I have chatted to some people in that same industry who kind of say the same. It's kind of, they can't get enough work. They're having it all the time, which is really good.
Yeah.
After you finished Run With Me, was it something like you were waiting to see how that was going to be received, or is it something that you just continued just to go back to the next project and start working on that?
Yeah, I mean, Run With Me was such a small one. Like we had the screening, and you know, I don't know, I think maybe 80 people came to it, which, you know, is a lot in real life, not a lot if you're like looking at views online. But you know, we had a good amount of views online, but it didn't really matter to me that much. Like I already had my sights kind of like set on that. Like as soon as we did Run With Me, like we did the screening, had some really great feedback. Like basically everyone was like, this looks really good, because you know, obviously it was a bit of a surprise to me, because they're like, you know, if this is your first shot film, most people's first shot films don't look that good. But I'm like,
Sure.
and I was trying to compute it, but it's like really when I thought about it, I've come from 12 years of like experience. Of course, I know how to make it. Outdoor scene look good with natural light. That's what I've been doing. So that kind of gave me, I guess, the confidence to be like, I'm on the right track, because it's like I'm not starting from scratch, really. I've still got 12 years of visual experience behind me. So it's like kind of having that, personal feedback was really nice, and it definitely gave me confidence to keep going. But I was already like to Joanne, hey, help me write this in a beach, like straight after. So I'm like, I need to do more. And yeah, that's how it tends to continue.
Are you still doing your photography on the side as well as this sort of stuff too?
Yeah. So I mean, it'll always be there. At the moment, like I've really kind of just been working with clients who I've worked with forever. So I've been a lot more just doing like the regular e-com stuff on the side. I think I've had a little bit of a break for a while because I was filming. But yeah, so I mean, if it comes along, I'm still going to do it. And especially if it's regular clients who I have a rapport with, like, of course, I'll always be there for them. Or if a like campaign came out, I'll definitely want to do it. But it is a weird kind of place because people obviously, from what I can tell, like see me pivoting into the filmmaking world. So I think they're less likely to say, want to book me for photography, because they're like, oh, she's not doing that anymore.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I'll still do it. But, and I think I just, I don't know, maybe I'll go out and just shoot something for fun one day. But it's not my focus anymore, but I definitely still shoot. And it's actually refreshing some days to just go and just shoot stills like how I used to. It's like, oh,
shoot for
easy.
fun kind of almost.
Yeah. Good day with the girls, just chatting, taking pictures. Like, it's fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you shoot a bit on the C300.
Yep.
That seems to be your camera of choice for your productions at the moment.
Yeah.
When did you come about in getting that camera, and how does that help you as a creative, exploring your vision? And obviously using the lenses, which I'll talk on in a bit as well.
Yeah, sure. So I got the C300 Mark III, look, I'm going to say a year and a half ago. I did like explore the R5 first for video when that came out. And then it wasn't quite, like, because, back then it had the overheating thing and stuff like that. So I'm like,
and the record limits and things like that. It's hard to know,
Exactly. I'm like, this isn't quite like when, I was like trying to bridge the gap between photography and cinema, but then I realized I just needed to go the full way. So I got that, and, I love it. It's phenomenal. Shoot with it all the time on all of my commercial stuff and all of my short films. We've had that one. And then we've also been getting from Canon, because they've been supporting me, obviously. So they've been sending us the C500 Mark II. So we've been shooting with both on the last 3. Yeah. So yeah, happy days. It's great.
And I note that you do change up your lenses quite often, because obviously people are a bit unsure about buying into a system. You have to use the lenses and or the set lenses that you can buy for that specific mount. But it seems like you had a bit of fun experimenting with different lenses. And I think being a filmmaker, using vintage lenses is quite popular as well.
Yeah.
I noticed, I think you've used some some vintage FD glass.
Yeah. So Run With Me was shot on the vintage Canon FDs. Like, obviously for my stills work, oops, sorry, just knocked that. So there's a big loud clank on there. Anyway.
Sorry, Dan.
Obviously for stills, I've always used the Canon, the standard lenses. Like my go-tos are the 24-70. Oh, I did it again. Oh my goodness. The 70-200, and then a couple of primes. But with Run With Me, when I was getting into this, so basically the story behind that, it's cool that they are vintage Canon lenses.
For sure.
It ties in.
Yes.
But there's a set of film lenses called the Canon K35s, and they're like vintage cinema lenses, right? And then so the Canon FDs are essentially meant to be the photography version of that cinema lens. They're made with the same glass, same elements, all that stuff. So they're meant to basically give off the same look, but for a fraction of the price.
Sure.
And I say a fraction, but they were trending. So
it's a big fraction.
It is a big fraction. Like I in this, early obsession of wanting to be doing all this filmmaking stuff. I did YouTube, eBay, like I was hunting eBay for these lenses.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I got the 85.
They call it gas, essentially, don't they?
Oh, ridiculous. So it's like the 85 1.2 aspherical Canon FD lens. I think it was like over $2,000 that I paid for it, which is the price of, you know, a modern one. Expensive, but you know, photography and videography and filmmaking is an expensive hobby. So if you're in this game, not willing to, you know, invest all of your money into gear, then what are you doing?
For sure.
But yeah, so those lenses we shot Run With Me, and they had a beautiful aesthetic, but they are quite vintage and they're not, you know, up to scratch for the newer kind of stuff. Like they definitely, like, obviously you're getting them from eBay, so I think some had some fungus in there, you know, like I did the best I could, but you know, I'm not getting like complete mint condition. Like there's no way to really tell that they're going to be that. Like one of them had a weird flare thing where, you know, when it was backlit, it would kind of bloom in the center, like this really bright white spot. And I mean, that's too risky.
Usually the opposite of kind of what you want, I guess, or the reverse even.
Yeah, like I had to do some grading to fix that.
For sure.
In the middle.
Not ideal.
Not ideal, but some of the other ones looked stunning. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, I still have those. They're lots of fun.
Awesome. Now, tell us a bit about Unseen, which is quite a different direction to, I guess, the pure romance side of things.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the development in that film for you.
So that, I think it was just like, I didn't have the next one ready to go, Casino Beach, so I was just like itchy feet. I'm like, what's next? And that script was actually written by the 2 cast members in there.
I did know that, which I thought was very interesting. The 2 people that were playing the roles also wrote the role.
Yeah, because obviously these young actors, they want to get out there and they're doing their own journey to get their stuff seen and you know, heard as well. So they basically came to me because Ari, who was in Unseen, was also in Run With Me. She's also in Casino Beach.
I thought so.
She's in 3 of my productions.
Nice.
Big fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they basically came to me and they're like, we're not sure if this is your thing because it's a thriller, but do you want to read the script? And I read it and I'm like, oh, let's have some fun. Like, you know, it was actually really fun. Shoot that. And I would shoot thriller stuff again, for sure. But, you know, it still had that element of romance in there. So
for anyone who hasn't seen it, how would you describe the film?
Well, look, I mean, it's not a horror, but it's a thriller. You know, like this couple, they go to this bus in the woods.
A very good-looking couple.
Yeah, very good-looking couple. I'll tell them they said that. I'm sure they'll be, you know, chuffed.
Please.
And basically, you know, he gets possessed by a spirit and then, you know, whacks her over the head, and escapes. And, you know, it's a short film, so you can't really tell miles of story, but in a nutshell, that's what happened. So
I was going to say Mount Tambourine for the location. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it was somewhere up there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly.
Again, kind of blessed with the landscape that you're in.
Yeah.
To some degree. I think we were talking earlier before about how important it is with location and how that can drive your direction a lot. And you've come from Brisbane to Sydney to Gold Coast, which is quite interesting. You said you probably would never see yourself ending up at Gold Coast, but it's become quite the move for you, really.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Which is really cool. I guess the move from Sydney to Gold Coast, what inspired that direction?
So, I mean, really, it's
a broad
it's nothing
question.
Creative. Basically, you know, I had a new baby, and when you're in Sydney, it's like a hustler's lifestyle. You know, it's for the young and the hustling. You know, yes, you can be there with kids, but it's very expensive. A lot of the city is like moving really fast, and I feel like in that first year of having a newborn, you're kind of not really like out in the world how you used to be. So, you know, I also needed additional help from my mum, who had just retired on the Gold Coast, and I was just like, why are we here? We're not even like leaving the house, you know, like, and paying all that rent. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, we'll go there where we have supportive family and, you know, fresh new lifestyle sort of thing. And, you know, that was basically it. But it was the right move, you know, sort of thing. And it's been like all of my work basically was up here anyway. Like I was flying before I had Bronte. I was flying up here like every week anyway for clients. So yeah, Gold Coast is really like, I feel like the place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Access all the surrounds within a reasonable drive.
Nice. And for anyone that sort of writes off a location, moving is not the end of the world. And like, obviously, the change is kind of giving you the push you've needed to take to the next step as well, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I love a sea change. Like, even moving to Sydney, you know, it was fun. Like, I 100% know that in the future I will move to another one, probably overseas. That would be fun. Like, I've never done that before. But, you know what? I'll give Melbourne a go. Like,
for sure.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the filmmaking and the inspiration behind the things that you like to do or like to watch, what do you think makes a good story? And obviously short stories are hard because you've got to kind of wrap it up in a very short amount of time, but also quite challenging to make the length quite long as well, I'm sure, to tell the story efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky question because what makes a good story is so like dependent on the person who's watching its opinion, like, because there's so many different genres, like, and everyone likes different things. Like, as I mentioned, I kind of just wanted to make stuff that I like, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea. And it's also not the deepest of storytelling, you know, it's fairly watchable, commercial, you know, like stuff. But that's my style, even in photography, is, you know, commercial, watchable, sellable stuff. Like, yeah, look, I'm probably not giving you the deepest answer here, but you know, I don't know, engaging, interesting, have a little bit of something going on to keep you intrigued, you know.
I noticed that like the lighting direction was quite different from Unseen to Run With Me. I think Run With Me, you incorporated a bit more natural light, a bit of the location. But Unseen was completely dependent on the lighting direction and the lighting that you utilize. Were those color palettes something that you kind of developed yourself? Like, is there something you wanted to show within that?
Yeah, so I think with Run With Me, it was very much natural light because that was my comfort zone. That's what I knew. I wasn't really going out there to over-challenge myself at that point. I just wanted to be able to do something well and in my comfort zone, but in this new area. But that being said, it came out beautifully, I think. But that was, pretty much all natural light except for, you know, the nighttime flashback scene, which had the fire and then the moonlight. Unseen was definitely much more lit and had those intentions. So, you know, I was talking to the gaffer and I'm like, okay, well, we wanted to give it those more spooky tones. So we had kind of the typical like blue and orange contrast and stuff like that. And that was fun because that was a new go for it. That was a new challenge. And even now with the next productions, like what we've just done on Christmas Eve is like, it's, you know, blended in with natural light, but just watching this gaffer work, I'm just like learning so much more about lighting. Coming from someone who's only ever really worked with natural light, it's just literally mind blowing. Like what he did on that, I'm like so intricate, so damn good. And it's been really interesting. Like every production is like elevating and learning a lot more in that. Because obviously as a cinematographer, that's, you know, whole part of the journey.
For sure. I find the look as well, being a director or director of photography on a set, your job is obviously to be making it visually like a feast as well to the emotion. I do know you employ maybe a similar style. Correct me if I'm wrong, from your photography days, that dreamy sort of aesthetic. The beautiful, dreamy type. Where's that sort of come from for you?
I think so. I mean, it's interesting you say that. I think this more, I guess, dreamy aesthetic, as you put it, is something that has come in the more recent years. I think because I get bored and seek the next interesting thing. So I always try something new, like starting shooting film, as in like 35mm film. Starting experimenting with like chroma filters on the front, which gives that. And it's like, that's something that only I think in the last 2 years since being here on the Gold Coast and kind of making that mental pivot has been something new that I've explored, which has possibly started to blend over. That being said, I think my filmmaking work looks incredibly different to my photography work, if I'm honest.
I apologize.
Only because there's like my photography work is so, it's just, I find the film stuff is a lot more moody, whereas my photography stuff is much more bright, vibrant, classic, like lit in very different ways.
Fun
Yeah.
and beautiful and
exactly. Pretty, for lack of a better word. Whereas in film, I feel like I've been able to explore a bit more moody kind of lighting that never really came into the world of commercial fashion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I definitely have been playing a bit more with that kind of stuff in my own like creative photo shoots now that I'm getting more into this. It's almost been my like
that's probably what I was trying to say. I think
it's been my like testing the waters before bringing it into here. So I think the merge.
And tell us about your experience with film photography, because obviously it's quite a big buzzword at the moment. It's obviously regained its popularity quite strongly. How much of that features in your photography work these days?
I love it.
Yeah.
I think most of the shots on my Instagram in the last like year to 2 years have been film stuff. And that's not even like necessarily what I get paid to shoot. I just like the aesthetic like everyone else does, because it's just a new, different, exciting thing. Like, you know, when you've been doing something for so long, you know, you've got to reinvent and find something new and fun to play with. That being said, sometimes I, like the other day, I think I did a post and I looked back at my swimwear stuff from like maybe 6 years ago, like in, I think, talking to Keely the other day, it's like the glory years of like 2017 to 2018. I didn't shoot film at that time, so shooting all digital.
I'll bring some images up while you talk.
Yeah, so like the stuff like all, you know, on tropical islands, and it was all shot digital, but I'm like, I don't shoot like that anymore, and I actually still really love it. So it's so weird to kind of, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, but
must be nice just going into a high fashion sort of styled shoot and just have fun with it. Like I've noted on your vlogs, you create that atmosphere or the environment where things are going to be fun, which I've noted in your vlogs.
I hate it when you get in trouble. It's like no talking on, you know.
I've seen your sister Ash feature as well in some of your vlogs.
She's not my sister.
She's not your
sister.
That's
so funny because we look very similar.
I think you said this is my sister Ash.
So I think I made a joke about that. Because we traveled together and did a shoot. We went over to London, Paris, something like that. And everyone thought we were sisters because we both had blonde hair.
Yeah,
we have lovely faces. We look very similar.
Do you keep the same sort of so do you keep the same sort of crew with your photography jobs? Is that something you generally?
Look, it's usually dictated by the client. Yeah. So although I get to pick my assistants, who usually I work with people who I've worked with before and like their vibe, but often it's with the same people. Like there's a few makeup artists who I'll always work with, a few stylists, like Ash, I've worked with her a bunch, love her to pieces. She now has a kid as well, and models as well. So it seems to like cycle and be like a trend, and they'll book everyone together like on things for a while. Yeah, I mean, they're some of my closest friends, I would say.
Cool. And I guess we're probably going to get some questions, but direction from
I just saw Keely said, who's your favorite employee? You are, Keely.
That is one of the questions. We should probably touch on the question for a bit as well.
I told her to write that.
Yeah. So Keely asked, what is your favorite employee? But
actually,
she also
I'm going to say Alex, who's my favorite employee.
Okay. I'm going to start some arguments at home, I think. She also has given us a good question as well. What's your secret to capturing good film photos? Now that's again pretty hard, but I'm sure there's lots of boyfriends of Instagram out there that really need your advice. So
maybe
we're on a beach setting. Someone's handed you an iPhone. How do you make it look good?
An iPhone or a film camera? Because they're two very different things.
Either or. But let's say iPhone, because everything's going to go to Instagram anyway.
I think she means film photos. I don't post iPhone photos of models on my page because I'm presenting as a professional photographer.
Of course.
So
I was talking more from the boyfriends of Instagram angle.
Well, I mean, iPhones are damn good these days. It's pretty easy. You've just got to like compose it properly. Feet at the bottom, lots of space at the top, or cut above the knee. Simple as that.
Brilliant.
You know?
And were you looking for any specific lighting?
Well, it depends what you want to go. Oh, the sky's the limit. I need some like. I need to like draw some graphs or something here.
How do you come up with? How do you come up with your beach photos to look a bit different, because the last thing you obviously want to do is be pigeonholed to some degree when you take photos. How do you make it point of difference in every shoot that you do?
That's tricky because, I mean, as you said, the world's so saturated with very many talented photographers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that my work is that revolutionarily different to anyone else's.
Yeah.
Everyone's, you know, like, what I believe though is everyone's natural like eye comes into it. It's like I can't try and shoot like someone else, because when I see the frame, I just see what instinctually I see and compose it how I want to. But I mean, look, you've kind of got 3 options. You can go sun fully on the front, sun fully behind, or like kind of like, you know, sun over here and a little bit half shaded, which, you know, like
Nice.
if you're shooting natural light, all look good. You just need to be able to understand how you should expose for each of them. And
probably just check out your website. Maybe that's a good starting point.
I'm going to do a workshop, I think.
A workshop? Have you got one upcoming?
No, I have an online workshop that I released, actually.
Because you've also got your own filter set as well, I believe.
I do, yeah. So, I mean, that's been
Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, that's been a huge part of my career, a very surprising part. So, in a nutshell, started out selling presets in like, I think 2017, 2018, when that was a lot of the rage. A lot of creators were selling their colors, you know, and coloring is a big thing for me. Like even in film now, I color grade all of my films myself because I absolutely love it. And I think that is actually something that with people's photography styles helps to really define them, is the color grade that they do on it. To be honest, that's what I think makes most of the difference between an amateur and a professional photographer. Like, because you can mess up really easily and you can have it really good as well. So yeah, started selling presets, which went really well. And then, you know, I wanted to find out how to get it in an app. Back then, you know, like even Lightroom didn't allow you on your mobile to import presets and stuff. And so through a random connection, I found a developer. I won't go into the full story. And he helped me to develop Colourtone, which is the app that I have created and released in June 2018. So that's basically my filters as a professional photographer, as well as now we've got other photographers in there as well. Bringing those filters onto your iPhone so everyday person can use them, because obviously there's a big, you know, everyone who's on Instagram like wants to have the same aesthetic that their favorite influencers have, and it's a very like user-friendly way to have it. You don't have to have any technical knowledge. You don't have to be a photographer to be able to achieve, you know, these great filter formats so easily. And yeah, so Colourtone launched and has, you know, had incredible growth, like really organically. I actually don't really know how, but it's successful, and it's like one of my greatest achievements. Yeah, it's had, I think, 5 million, maybe 5.5 million downloads. So yeah, it's easy. It's like it works, it's easy, and it gives the people what they want. So that's it. But yeah, definitely
check it out.
Proud of that one.
Check it out. So for those at home who just want some good presets to their images.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, if you've got a photo and you just want something super easy, but also in the style that you've seen around that wasn't available on other ones, you know, it's right there. Button. Boop.
Yeah. Probably one of the last questions I'm going to ask. I've got one from John as well, which we'll probably ask now. Is there a fashion brand or model you would move heaven and earth to work with? Have you got someone in mind?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's probably changed a little bit now that I'm more focused in the film world, but like a model who I would have moved heaven and earth to shoot with would be Elsa Hosk. Like, to be honest, like amazing. Like I would have loved to shoot Victoria's Secret back in the day. That was the kind of goal, like pre-baby, to like head in that direction, go to America, you know, aspire for those things. But now that's kind of changed. But yeah, she'd be my pick. If I could pick anyone, her or Rosie Huntington-Whiteley as well. Amazing. Yeah.
Probably the last question as well before we do a brand new segment that we've created here at CameraPro.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes. What advice would you give to anyone that wants to follow down a similar path as you in the photography or videography aspects. What advice would you tell from your knowledge yourself?
Well, I mean, I think it really comes down to consistency and really wanting it. Like, it's not easy to pursue, especially in the film world. Like, that's a whole different beast. And people who work on film sets, it's like they have got to want to be in there because it's really long, hard days' work and years. It's crazy. But if we're talking more in photography, it's like, be consistent, keep hustling, shoot what you want to be hired for. Like, just keep shooting, literally, and then you'll get better. Keep elevating your models who you're shooting with, or, you know, kind of if there's a brand that you want to work with, then maybe get some of their clothes and do a shoot in that style so you can kind of get noticed in that realm. But it's really what I think is the, you know, from photographers who I even now follow more of my colleagues, like, it's really the consistency. They've been around for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's why their name's still known and that's why they're now successful. But it's not overnight. It takes a really long time. Like, I don't think I got paid for 6 years in the beginning, like, besides my full-time jobs, but like on my side stuff until I went freelance. That was basically when I started getting paid, and I was shooting on the side, you know, and that's going to happen. So don't let it deter you. But really, the ones who will succeed are the ones who consistently stick around and consistently show up and consistently do it and then keep improving.
I've heard a great quote the other day. It was about an ice cube. I'm sorry, I'm going to do a personal one here. That the ice cube doesn't melt at, you know, at a certain degree. It's once that degree has been reached, then the ice cube starts melting. It might not be 27, 28, 29, 29. It might be the 30th degree that it hits. That's when the ice cube melts. And I think with career paths such as yourself, I've spoken to a few others as well, that there'll be a certain tipping point where things will start to click and things will start to work out. But it's getting to that point is all going to be very gradual. So
yeah,
I think that's proof in your work as well, which is really nice.
Yeah, and there's definitely nothing wrong with having a day job, and then preferably one in the field that you want to be in, and then so you can learn from that as well. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and then shoot on the side. You know,
even you started assisting a lot, and just like, you don't just have to go in there and start trying to make it all yourself. You can have a good team around you, and that can be the deciding factor.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get into a quick rapid fire segment. We don't have a name for it, Bonnie. Do you got any names for this segment?
I don't know. I think rapid fire questions is probably a good start. I don't know.
Let's start with question 1: photography or filmmaking?
Filmmaking now.
Filmmaking.
I've got to say it. It's the future.
Zoom or prime?
I wish I could say prime, but honestly, I shoot with zooms more.
Zoom?
Yeah. As I mentioned, 24-70 and 70-200. Oh, beautiful.
That's the combo.
That's it. It covers you for everything.
Modern lens or vintage lens?
Practically modern lens, but I like vintage lenses better. I should just pick one, but I'm not. I'm selfish.
What was your pick, sorry?
Modern lens.
Modern lens.
Maybe with some filtration over the top.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like a Tiffin Pro Mist or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So you get the mix.
Film or digital?
I'm going to say film.
Film on that one. Huge.
It's better.
Any shout out to any labs that you use? Ikigai?
Oh, yeah, Ikigai. Yeah, they're the best in the biz.
Pretty good.
Yeah, always gone to them. Shout out.
Shout out Ikigai.
Yep.
Artificial or natural light?
Natural light.
Natural light? Horror or romance?
Romance.
Romance?
Yeah.
Thriller or romance? Still romance?
Still romance, 100%. Romance with a hint of thriller. It's a good sweet spot.
There's a film for that, I think.
Probably.
It's called Unseen. That's the direction I was going.
Gotcha. Like Casino Beach is kind of like that too, but you haven't actually seen it, so
it's not out yet.
Exactly.
Not out yet, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Bali or Byron?
Ooh.
It's the influencer special question.
Bali.
Bali? Have you've been, obviously?
Yeah, many years ago, but I mean, Byron's a bit kind of tainted at the moment, isn't it? So it's like, I don't know. If I had the choice to go to either, I'd probably take a trip to Bali.
So is Byron.
Yeah. Anyway.
Chris or Liam Hemsworth?
You know what? I'm gonna go Liam Hemsworth.
I'm gonna go
Only because
Liam.
I've got a couple of degrees. Liam, if you're listening, so
He's on The Witcher now.
I know. A couple of the girls who are in a production course that I did recently, they're now working on the film that he's on. And like one of them, I was at lunch with her the other day and she's his driver. And I'm like, hey, hook a sister up. Liam's single.
Yeah.
Me up if you need.
Liam.
Chris is married. He's got
if you're watching, Liam.
Watching. Hey.
Margot Robbie or Isla Fisher?
Margot Robbie.
Margot? That was an easy pick.
Yep.
Nice. Cool. I think that's it. I don't have any more questions for you, but
not one on the spot.
On the spot?
Yep.
No, I don't have any. I don't have any. What filter brand do you use? You got Moment? Have you got Tiffin?
Okay, so I mean, yeah, I've used Tiffin Pro Mist. I have the like photography versions of them, but the big 4x5 or whatever filters they are for like the matte boxes are very expensive.
Yeah.
So I have not got a set of those yet, but we use them on Casino Beach. But I have a set of I think they're like the Dream Effects filters, which are not quite as good standard. I mean, yes, they're great. Sorry. But I like them. So, oh God, I've got to stop talking. But I like them too. So yeah, I have a set of those.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, Bonnie, thank you very much for joining us tonight. You did well. You're a bit nervous, I know, but you've nailed it. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. Any other questions before we go, or is that it?
No, that's it. You're done.
See ya.
Yeah. So join us next week. We will have another On the Couch as well. We're going to discuss a bit about the Canon Light Award. So we've got some very special guests joining us next week. But for now, stay tuned. Click the subscribe button. Bonnie, I forgot to ask you, how do people contact you? Where are your socials at?
Gotcha. Best place is probably just on Instagram at Bonnie Cee, just one word.
Yep.
Otherwise, I do have my old school photography website. Haven't updated it in a while, but that's bonniecee.com. Or if you want to see my new film work, you can go to bcpictures.co, I believe that is.
Perfect.
And yeah, that's good. All the new stuff. Lots of fun.
And download the app.
Oh, yeah, and get Colourtone, but you might already have it. So
get Colourtone. But yeah, so we're on CameraPro TV on YouTube, I believe, and CameraPro AU on Instagram. Like and subscribe and keep up to date with everything. But apart from that, have a very good evening. It's been a special night. Thank you.